Connected.
Connected futures.
Connected futures.
Dați certa.
Connected
Futuros
futures.
conectados. Connected futures.
Connected futures.
At the intersection of business, technology, and people is Connected Futures, your guide to business success.
We do foresee at some point machines fighting machines. So, AI malware coming up against defensive AI malware. It's an interesting one to really think about, because I do think that it's going to change very, very quickly. It's like most of these things. We always take a view and say, yeah, well, it's probably going to happen tomorrow. It doesn't, but lo and behold, it starts to come about the day after, and that always takes us by surprise, just the speed at which things change.
That's Steve Durbin, Managing Director of the Information Security Forum. Like many experts, he's keeping a close eye on the accelerating arms race in cyberwar. It's a war that's increasingly relentless, smart, and expensive, with a minimum toll of $500,000 in more than half the incidents, Cisco reports. More and more, it's also highly automated, with sophisticated attacks that probe, adapt, hide, and replicate on their own. That leaves IT and security teams struggling with a complexity and sheer volume of data that can be unmanageable with conventional strategies. Business leaders will need the right technology, strategies, and talent for a machine versus machine arms race. It's a battle that's only going to intensify as nascent technologies like machine learning and its more advanced cousin artificial intelligence play a growing role for attackers and defenders alike. Hi, this is Kevin Delaney, Executive Editor of Connected Futures. I spoke with a number of subject matter experts in cybersecurity. All agree that human security teams are up against ever more devious, technically sophisticated adversaries, at a time when many face a serious talent crunch in IT and security. Here's Ryan Berg, Chief Scientist for Barclays Security.
And we've seen a number of attacks over the last few years where the information was there if someone was just looking at it. And part of it, we begin to tune out things because we're trying to find the nuggets that make sense. And with the amount of information that we're seeing, that there's really too much information that people can't process in, I guess, in a way that is not causing some amount of alert fatigue. And so we're losing the needle in the haystack.
Emerging technologies can assist in defensive measures that are simply beyond the scope of beleaguered human IT teams. Here's Lucy Lagrimas of Cisco's threat intelligence group Talos, which blocks 19.7 trillion threats daily.
Just because the sheer amount of data, right, that we have to analyze, machine learning allows us to essentially get down to what is, the essential for us to produce detection content. So, when I think about the areas where we utilize machine learning, we've got, we're in the email space, right? We're trying to produce detection that provide protections against threats that come through the email gateway. So we have lots of different kinds of email data that, is in the petabytes, if you will. So if, we've got machine learning that help us identify, bad mails versus good emails. We've got machine learning that allows us to identify malware samples in terms of their family identifications. We've got, looking for new threats in the mounds of email. We've got exploit kit detection for NGFW. We utilize it for categorization. So, content categories and threat categories are part of the security intelligence portfolio offerings we have that are consumed by Cisco products and services. So we use machine learning to help us classify, websites and determine what kind of content there is and whether there's any malicious content. So it's pretty pervasive in what we do and has been for quite some time.
A swarm of shapeshifters. Malware and botnets are able to shapeshift, meaning that security teams face enemies that replicate and adapt, sometimes from moment to moment. Here's Matt Wachinski of Cisco Talos.
Attackers generate 100,000 iterations of a piece of malware every single day when they deploy them, so that each individual person may receive a unique piece of malware. It's the same malware, but it's been modified in some way so that it is unique. There's definitely not a human being doing that, right? They've created their scripts and their computer programs to automate their lives. So while it may not be backed by something that's making a decision or attempting to recognize a pattern, we're already in a computer-to-computer war.
But in the battle for cyberwar supremacy, the good guys too are getting a whole lot smarter. Here's Matt Wachinski again.
We parse hundreds of thousands and millions of things a day that we have to turn into protections. While my organization's 300 people, nobody's looking at 90-95% of that stuff that comes in that we actually generate a signature for or say is bad. Right? It's all auto-classified.
Still, as many of our experts were quick to point out, it's important to note that these technologies are only beginning to make an impact. The real changes in security are down the road. Here's Steve Durbin again.
And so I think there's a lot of potential in the space, but for the majority of what I would call mainstream organizations or mainstream CISOs, I really don't think that AI and machine learning is anywhere close to delivering on its promise. That being said, it does have really exciting potential for things like incident detection, identifying and communicating risks, particularly around threat intelligence, and of course that old chestnut of situational awareness so that you can understand better your security status, particularly if you've got extended networks and so on. So I think in its infancy, lots of potential, but we're going to have to wait for a little while yet.
Turning that potential into reality, however, is going to be ever more important, given the sheer amount of threats a typical organization faces. The human element. With machines taking over so much in security, what is the role of humans? In short, those 300 experts on Matt Wachinski's team are in no danger of being replaced, and that goes for other security staffs, as Ryan Berg stressed.
That human element of defining the business context, the business constructs, is going to continue to be necessary because there are so many moving dials and levers. One business does not look like another, and the only way you can introduce the right amount of context, at least for the foreseeable future, is the human element. Humans need to define the context. I've built a lot of different machine learning algorithms, and people think that they are that it's a mystery, right? And I said, well, effectively, the machine is actually still stupid. The computer is still relatively dumb, right? It requires the human to introduce the context into the machine for the machine to have any understanding of what it's doing in the first place. And that piece of it is not going away for a long time.
Sven Krasser is the chief scientist at CrowdStrike. He calls AI and machine learning force multipliers. But he's quick to clarify their current limitations.
Think of machine learning or AI as somewhat of a force multiplier. It's kind of the robotics for us doing work with data. It allows us to work with more data. It's kind of a tool that lets us lift bigger and heavier data sets. We can do that faster in a more repeatable fashion. And most importantly, you can do things that go beyond human cognition. The human element is important in the sense of that we want to amplify that human knowledge, and that can take various forms depending on what kind of machine learning or AI is used. There's somewhat this misunderstanding of AI as this independent, intelligent agent that reasons. That's not really what it is. AI, those are algorithms right now that can make specific data-driven tasks easier, and they can help us work with larger data sets, but we're not really at a stage where you have these algorithms independently reason.
But as Matt Wachinski of Thales is quick to add, cyber criminals of the human variety do reason.
My guess is my 7-year-old will hopefully never have to learn to drive a car. He'll just get in one, push a button, and it'll go wherever he wants to go. I don't see those types of technologies being as effective in the security space, mainly because a road doesn't move, stop signs don't disappear, and stop signs and street lights are not out to get you. But in the security space, you're up against a human being who can change the entire landscape on a dime. And it's going to be difficult for machines to adapt to that.
But whatever the current limitations, those bad actors still understand the potential of increasingly powerful machines to support their nefarious deeds. As Steve Durbin adds,
what is available for the good guys is also available for the bad guys.
The best strategy, then, is making the right investments in human talent, augmented with technology. That could include upskilling in-house talent, adding machine learning, or relying on outside vendors. In most cases, a blend of those capabilities will be the winning formula. Here's Steve Durbin.
Great example of where we can use technology in conjunction with human interface. I think that what machine learning is going to be good at doing in the short term is just scanning through masses of data that we as individuals can't. Well, I think the role of the human being in it then is analyzing that data, really trying to take it onto the next stage, applying it to a business situation. And so for me, the opportunity lies in combining those two elements rather than the one replacing the other. And I think with the kinds of technical skills shortages that we are going to continue to see for some while to come, yes, anyway, that can only be for the good.
A talent gap for the AI age. While machines are in no rush to replace humans, they are forcing a redefinition of the skill sets needed to remain secure and competitive. And given the talent crunch in IT, especially around emerging technologies like machine learning, it will be essential for leaders to ensure that their teams continue to grow their skills, not just to expand their capabilities, but to draw talent in the first place. Here's Ryan Berg of Barclays Security.
You have to have a plan to build that muscle memory within your organization. If you want to have that capability, you are going to have to be willing and able to develop that capability in-house. Where security became first there was many organizations I had to go and hire the experts. Many organizations realized we can't hire them. There aren't that many. There aren't enough of them. So we have to figure out how we're going to grow that capability as something that our organization is capable of doing. And machine learning is the same thing, right? That you're going to have to be able to grow that capability internally. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it needs to be a process that is part of your company's sort of DNA, right? You need to build that in-house because as you know, right, there is a genuine talent shortage.
Creating those continuous ongoing opportunities to expand IT skill sets is critical to drawing talent and remaining competitive and secure, Steve Durbin adds. In effect, it's a contract between the organization and the prospective employee.
The challenge becomes, how do we keep these people? You're not going to be able to retain them for lengthy periods of time. So I think that this really takes us into the realm of transparency and almost an open engagement contract between the technical specialists and the enterprise, where we're having conversations about exactly what can we as an organization do for you as an employee, and how does that fit with what it is that you're trying to do. And if we provide you with some of these, exposure to machine learning, upskilling you technically, what are you going to be able to provide back to us, and over what kind of period? That's an entirely different conversation from the ones I think that most traditional security businesses and CIOs are used to having with their staff. Those that are coming into the workforce now have an entirely different level of expectation when you compare it with some of the more traditional, baby boomers and so on that are perhaps traditionally in these kinds of senior roles. And that's going to require a massive rethink. So, yeah, to your point, you have to continually train, you have to continually upskill, but it's also about transparency and this open engagement contract where both parties understand what it is that they're looking to achieve by collaborating over a period of time, whatever that may look like.
Moreover, security can't just be seen in terms of defense. It needs to be integrated into any company's growth strategy, with CIOs and CISOs given a voice at the highest levels of the C-suite and the board. After all, innovation can't thrive under a cloud of uncertainty from security threats, as Steve Durbin emphasizes.
But I do wonder whether or not a number of organizations don't see this as a potential competitive advantage. Security traditionally has not been in that space, but certainly one of the things that I've noticed over the past couple of years is that it is moving much more there, because security, of course, is becoming integral into business strategy and the way that we go to market, the way that we protect our assets, and that can generate some competitive advantage.
Bad actors and low-hanging fruit. The good news is that many cyber criminals have yet to leverage AI and machine learning. But that's partly because there's still so much low-hanging fruit to exploit. Like, for example, organizations with substandard security practices. After all, why would hackers invest in advanced technologies when many employees still click on suspicious attachments without even thinking? That, of course, could change fast, especially as state-sponsored cyber criminals continue to elevate their skills. Here's Sven Krasser on the risks of simply looking away.
It's easy to be complacent, but you need to move on. You need to adapt new technologies. Machine learning has never been as accessible as it is right now. It's very easy to get started, but it requires an investment, and that investment needs to be more than just getting a couple of data scientists on the team, right? It needs to be part of your strategy. You need to have a data strategy, and it needs to be part of your processes. And that will become more and more relevant because we're starting to collect more and more data. If you take a look at technologies like the Internet of Things, right, there will be even more devices that generate even more data, and you need to be able to work with those volumes of data, like data that is very sparse, that has complicated relationships kind of baked in that are very hard to pick up for humans. So, long story short, is you need to start planning a strategy out to get into this field, leverage these new technologies sooner than later, or otherwise you will be left behind.
Not being complacent means preparing for the worst and looking past today's technologies to the next wave, including blockchain, the evolution from machine learning to true AI, and quantum computing, which Wachinski calls a crypto nightmare, and Steve Durbin a potential game changer.
Yeah, quantum is a long way off, but a long way off these days is probably no more than 5 to 6 years. But it is potentially a game changer for things like encryption, because quantum computing will break encryption. There's no doubt about that. And again, we've looked at this from a threat horizon standpoint. I think one of the things that I don't know whether concerned is the right word, but one of the things that I sort of call out in this area is we're probably not going to know when somebody has come up with quantum computing, because it is likely to be a nation state. It is likely to be put to a use that is going to be around things like cracking encryption, gathering information. For mainstream organizations, I don't think we're close to quantum computing. I think that a 10-year horizon is probably the way to be looking at it. That being said, again, a number of the financial services organizations, very large ones, are investing heavily in this particular space as well, as indeed are the vendors, of course.
In the meantime, security and business leaders face a perilous threat landscape, one that only promises to get worse. They must ensure that their teams have the right talent and technology and continue looking down the road as they prepare for tomorrow's threats while fending off today's emergencies. Sven Krasser concludes with a call for leaders to look out for where technology is going, not just where it is.
Yeah, you need to keep an eye out for what's available out there. Like your processes might work very well, but again, it's the innovator's dilemma, right? If you build the best tube television, that doesn't help you when people want to have an OLED display, for example, right? That's the same there. You need to see where the ball is going to be, where it is right now.
This is Kevin Delaney for Connected Futures. Special thanks to my very insightful guests. And here's hoping that your organization is safe, secure, and successful.
For more insights, analysis, and the voice of thought leaders, go to the Connected Futures online magazine at connectedfutures.com.